Okay, we are live here. Oh, look at that. It's so exciting. People are anxious for this one, as well as the other ones, but this one's been great. I know Carrie Ann Hoops, amazing person. Since I met you, so much stuff to look forward to. You have a really big experience on images. And today we're going to talk about using image to inspire people to follow Christ. And on the previous session, Carrie Ann, just update you. We talked about how to create images. We talked about the gotchas with legal issues that you may have. We talked about involving members and defining, what you want out of the posts. And what I like about your background here is you're a professional photographer that takes pictures of temples, and you've published them in church publications. You have your own agency. You work for a lot of these authors that these artists who create images of Christ and talk about them. And what I found out, and the specific audience we're going to talk about today is missionaries and members who have to create 30 posts a month, right? Or 60, because if you do 30 days, you're trying to do 2 posts a day, 60 posts, lots of images, right? And it takes time to create images and get the images out. And, you're going to run out of images really quick from the church images. So that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then members, when they're asked to create images, they're going to figure out, well, how do I do this? So what advice would you have for them as they're trying to figure out, how do I create posts and images are so important, because if you get the right image, you could triple, quadruple the amount of views. So what advice do you have for these members and missionaries who are trying to run their pages and create great, amazing content that's going to draw people closer to Christ? How do they go out and get these images, right? How do they think of them? What would you say to them?
Well, my first thought in that question is be authentic. What is relevant to what you are, to the people that you're trying to reach. If you're a missionary, and which we all are, and we're trying to share the gospel, we need to share our own feelings with it. How has it touched us? And so, just like you said, I work with artists. I actually am a missionary photographer for the church. And so everything that you just asked is everything that I do. And the church has great resources, thousands, hundreds of thousands of pictures that you can use for free from the church website. But many times people have created content that is fabulous, and it's relevant to what you're doing. The important thing is to remember that we need to know who owns it. So when you're talking about the church, if you pull it off of the church website, their company, the publishing company is Intellectual Reserve. So they own those pictures. As photographers, when we give those pictures, or as members, as we donate those pictures to the church, you're basically saying, I'm okay that these are used. And so it's great that you give credit back to the church, that's where it came from. But there's a lot of times when we're on social media where we find something and we share it. It is so important to share where you received that. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, that somebody can go back. Maybe there was something that, I believe in collaboration so much, that maybe there was something that struck them, and they're going to follow your page, and they're like, I really liked this content. And then they share that other page. And that's how we build together, is that collaboration, sharing things that really, like I said, are relevant, but also staying true to what, so for instance, I'm a portrait photographer as well, and I also photograph temples. I have different websites and I have different things that I cover. If I put all my temples on my portrait stuff, the people that are following that aren't going to be as interested. But if I put that on occasion and I share my feelings, people are like, oh, well, she's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What a beautiful picture. I'm really interested in that. But if I put that on the temple page where everybody else is following that, it is incredible. I did this run this week just so that I could talk about it. And it was like 7 times the amount of people. Within 10 minutes, I had 500 likes on this temple page. And on my portrait, it was like 6. And I did that to kind of, because I understand it, but I don't understand if I'm following something, why I'm seeing things that aren't relevant to me. And so it's really important that as we're trying to teach and share things of hope and love and the gospel, that we're sharing things that are broad. And when you touch on an experience that you had, those are the best. So one of the artists that I work for, it is unbelievable when we share one of her paintings, and she journals everything that she does. And when we put those words that she feels as she was painting that, which are all directed towards Christ, which are all directed towards the Spirit, and why she was directed to do something, it's unbelievable. The stories that come in, and I just feel so honored to be able to kind of gather those and be the middleman, and then she will respond, and because it's just, she's so inundated. And that is the case. And it's because people want to have hope. People want to feel that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And so when we're talking about this specific topic, that's what's so important and relevant, is that it's something that touches our hearts and is relevant.
So I like what you're saying. So it's you said a lot there, but make sure you give credit. And we talked about that in the previous session. And there are all these legal issues, but being able to then know where to put it, because if you know what the audience is looking for and where they are, they'll like and appreciate it more than somewhere that is not where they're hanging out.
Right.
So the context, and then the third thing you mentioned was about tying your content to the images. So maybe outsourcing your image and writing your content may not always be the best idea, but if you're creating the post and then picking the image, there seems like they're symbiotic, and doing that together will make it more powerful. Is that kind of what you're saying as well? Is you got to tell the feelings behind the image? Yeah.
And I think, there's things, for instance, the missionaries obviously aren't seeing these things, but as this pandemic has happened, everybody's throwing these memes out and all these funny things. And after a while, I'm like, hey, I'm over it. Like, we get it. We're all in the middle of it. But because it just was the same thing being shared over and over, which is kind of what you're saying. And I think the important thing to remember is that we are focused. You kind of have to be hyper-focused. So as you're doing things, as you're spending time on social media or doing other things, and getting those 30, 60 posts for that time, it's really important that you gather that. You may see something on social media and think, oh, that would be great to share. You know what? Save it, put it into your Facebook and schedule it. I'm a big believer in being able to create content. Like, you see something, for instance, conference, I sit with a notebook, and I really liked that. And I think, okay, what image would go with that? And I'm constantly trying to think, how would the imagery connect with the words? Because there's so much power in words, and there's so much power in imagery. And when you put them together, you've got double the connection. And so there are things that you'll see of other people's, and maybe it'll spark your interest. So there's so much value in reading and being proactive in reading the scriptures and conference and being on social media in the right places to spark your interest, because you want it to be authentic to you. But there's something that I had heard somebody talking about that many times, it was actually Greg Trimble, who will be on today, that there's so much content that has already been created that's incredible. So for instance, the apostles and prophets, they give us content. That content is amazing. And being able to partner that up with something that's beautiful. And in my instance, I have incredible images and paintings at my fingertips. And so I have access to that, but so does everybody else, the church, and things that, like I said, are on social media. There's so many places, but again, remember that those are owned. And most of the time, people are willing to let you use those with that credit. Most people are not like, oh no, you can't use my image to share my image. If you're giving them credit, they're like, great, that's free advertising, but then it's also attached to something beautiful.
No, I love that, because I found myself, as I've had to write, we grew this group to 350,000 people to follow Christ, and I was like, I have to write posts often. So I found myself, and it's probably the wrong thing, but when I would sit on a gospel Sunday school lesson in church, I'd open up my tablet and I'd listen, and then when something hits me, I'd start creating a Canva image with that quote in it, because you go with inspiration, and I've learned tons, because all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm looking for, how do I teach this versus just receiving it. And it's a creative process, and it's a spiritual process, which you've outlined. So as missionaries are asking members to help create images, or as missionaries create images, I think it brings a different dynamics to how you're studying the scriptures and how you're learning. Have you found that it awakens, maybe it helps you draw closer to Christ, just the creation process? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, the creation process. Let me share this. I've been a professional photographer for many, many years. And when I became a missionary photographer for the church, which means that we aren't paid, but we get assignments, sometimes local and sometimes other things specific that for the Ensign or things that they're doing, it slapped me in the rear. And I thought, no, I can't do this. I don't even understand this. And what it did is it awakened that creative process, because I thought, I like to do what I like to do, but I was being asked to do things that was pretty much out of my comfort zone, which is what we're doing to share the gospel online. And it didn't take long for me to see things like you're saying in Sunday school, that you found that worked, because it sparked you. Then you could see it, you could connect to it at that point. And then you don't have to think. But if you didn't do that, and you sat in Sunday school and you thought, oh, that would be cool, maybe I should write that down, and you get home, you're going to forget it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you won't remember those feelings. And so it's really important that when we feel kind of those nudges in the spirit, that we write them down and we start creating. Being a creative person, there's no time limit. Many times my creative period is about 2 a.m. till 5 a.m. Because the house is quiet and I can think whatever your time. The key thing, if I could say anything, is to constantly be looking for it, praying for it, because that's a big part of it. Is that if you're not open to it, because for me, I was not open to, we were doing a section for the church website in depression, and they wanted dark images, and they needed a lot of young men in these dark kind of just depression. And I'm like, I have no interest to photograph that. Well, come to find out, the church works a couple months ahead for the Ensign and stuff. They did like an entire spread in the New Era on it. And it was like literally right when I became a missionary for the church. And I thought, my work is important and I have to stretch myself. That means all of us, we have to stretch ourselves and do things. So it's hard to bear your testimony sometimes of Christ, or a situation that happened, or a hard thing. But those are the things, and we don't need to put everything out online. Absolutely don't need to. But there are things that you will feel the Spirit that says you need to share this, because it's going to touch somebody else's heart, and it's going to give them hope. And just like Elder Bednar, his new book, and just like Christ, everything was one by one. And so if you touch one person, then you're successful.
Yeah, and I love that, because you need to go with the Spirit. You listen, and for that one post you make, many people can see it and be touched as well. And sometimes it's not what we want to do, but the Spirit moves you like to do things that you learn from it. So let me ask you this, because it's something I've learned, is the better you can get at creating a great image and the text, the more people you'll help, you'll touch. And that was something interesting to me. And I would like your thoughts on this one. Was when I started, it was kind of novice and my posts weren't getting a lot of attention, but as I was able to get better and perfect the way I did my posts and my images, a lot more people would see them, and I was more productive. So there is a process of learning. Tell me what your thoughts are about, taking a serious look at being able to make, improve in your posts and your images, because it will be more effective. Do you believe that, or what's your thoughts there?
I do. I think consistency is a huge thing. When you're posting consistently, but you're also, there's so many different ways that you look. And my husband just said the other day, a picture that I posted, and he goes, "That's just a great image." We were in Hawaii, and it was a picture of a flower, and it kind of blew up online. And he said, it's fun to see your process over the years, how your images have gotten better, and the content, whatever's connected with it, it does matter. And again, it has to be relevant. You have to be relevant to what they're doing. So you don't want to post. So for instance, I work for a company, and it's based out of Utah, and literally it's LDS, well, not all LDS artists, but everything is basically driven around images of Christ and inspirational art. So I work with a couple different, specifically, I work with 3 of the biggest painters who paint Christ, who have all done stuff for the church. They are all very different. Their fan bases are all very different. But it is amazing to me how you can share something and you think, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. It touches my heart. And somebody's like, it's not really whatever it was. And you can post another one and you think, I don't know. It's not my favorite. And it blows up on the internet. It's not about us. It's about him. And it's about following the spirit of what we do. There's something different for everybody. Everybody is going to connect with something different than the other person. So whatever you were posting, it was connecting with people. But as you changed and you learned and evolved, it started connecting with people. And so sometimes it's hard to identify what that is. But for me, as a photographer, I feel like I wear so many hats in the imagery part of life. The biggest thing is being true to myself and what I like, but also kind of seeing, okay, what is everybody interested in? What matters? A good way to see that relevance is in a change, maybe in like homes, how home styles change. And so what are, what's the new latest and greatest cabinets, and what's the new style of couches, and what's the new flooring? It's no different when you're talking about things that connect. There's new pictures of Christ that will come out, and it's everywhere. And so everybody is like, oh, I want that picture of Christ. And maybe another month, something else will come out. But the one thing that is constantly changing is conference. We are constantly getting new revelations. And those revelations sometimes are revelations that we knew kind of from before, or they sound like something from before, like food storage. But it's new insight, and there's new things to connect with it. And so it's really important that you are involved in what is happening. I'm one of the youngest missionaries in our mission. There's about 50 of us now. When I started, there was about 100. And I think I'm probably the youngest. Most everybody's retired. And a lot of them lean on me for content creation and questions in certain things. I think it's because I am more involved in what's going on online. And so if we are in the right places, if we're on Follow Jesus Christ and we're on these sites that are giving us constant contact and constant information, we're going to learn. If you, for instance, were posting every so often when it was convenient, your follow base would fall, because people are like, well, I need something. They want this, right? They want content. And so it's important that we are consistent and we are relevant and we are authentic, but we're also engaged in the work. It's really important.
No, I love that, because as missionaries are working with members, or members are trying to create content, you, the best I think you outlined, they need to be connected. So they have to be listening. They don't, you don't know who they're writing to. They have to feel the spirit as they write that. Because you can just feel the spirit, but if you're not connected to your audience, it's spirit's for you. Like, it's helping
engaged.
You out. Engaged.
We in High Five Live, we've learned that when somebody comments, you comment back, because they want to know that you're listening. They want to know that it's not just, you're not just posting, and there is conversations that are happening, and there are lives changing because there is contact there and there's engagement.
So if you're asking a member who doesn't, they're like, I don't do Facebook, right? But I'll help you write a post and I'll help you create an image. So what you would probably need, and I'll get your feedback here as a missionary, is sitting with that member and saying, okay, let me tell you about what's going on online and what message people are looking for right now. And you're going to have to try to tell that story to that person so they can know what to create, because or else they're going to be, they'll create something that, may be good, but it doesn't connect with people. So give them advice there, right? So if you're dealing with members who are like, you know what, I just don't have time for Facebook, but I'll totally write a post for you. How prescriptive, what should they be telling members so that they could be able to, make best use of that post? Because the last thing you want to do is say, members, write me a post, and they write this big post, and they're like, I can't use this, right? Yeah. So walk through that process with me of how would you suggest that they approach these members?
Well, I think the first thing is prayer. When we turn it over to the Lord to get the guidance, because I don't think there's one right answer. It's going to be different. Whoever is writing that post and whatever content, is be prayerful about it. It's something that I think is really important, that when we connect, the Spirit's going to come. He's going to be there. And so if you're feeling that struggle of, I'm not really sure where to go with this, have a prayer and say, be very prayerful about this, and read the last General Conference. What is something that you found in your recent scripture study that really stood out to you? Find something online. When you start writing down your content, that they can easily say to them, can you find a picture online that identifies kind of the way that you feel from the content that you created, from the wording that stood out to you? And let's put those two things together and see if it works. I personally think we overcomplicate it. I think there's too much focus on the detail and not focused on the spirit of what it is. And so, and I think it's so important that, yes, we think and we're prayerful about it before we hit that post, but that we focus on what would the Lord have me say. And so it can be something as easy as a message. They don't even have to look for anything, but they can share a post on something that happened, a time in their life where, you thought you had no hope, and they were edified because this, ABC happened. We don't have to be scriptorians. We don't have to be savvy on the internet. If we've had an experience with Christ, if we've had an experience with the Book of Mormon, there is a scripture that stands out to you. And with that stands out, there was an experience. There was something that touched you with that. And so share that. It can be as simple as something like that.
No, I like that. And I think listening to Spirit and following Spirit is critical, and is the most important as you're asking them to go and create these images. And I also like what you said about the when the church was doing a piece on the pornography, that they had they kind of brought it all together, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to give context on what you're trying to do to the audience may also help as you're creating these images. That's the final part, is how is understanding the audience you're trying to reach, how important is that as you're trying to find your post and your image to do that, right? Something came to mind when you were talking about that. With the church, it's been really funny. I took a picture of two sisters who looked like they actually were twins.
The church, the very first time I saw that was on the church's website of Twitter. And it was connected with depression. And these ladies were laughing. And I'm like, how? I don't get where the church was going with that. I have now seen that picture posted. I never find out when they share my stuff, but I've got hundreds that they've used. I've seen that on 6 different outlets that they've used, with Church News and the Ensign and a couple different things, in everything, in pornography, in the youth, for young women. So don't think that just your image is for one thing. It can be identified to other things. And so I think if you're not a photographer, I have lots of people that reach out and will say, hey, I need something like this. Do you have that? Use your people, use your connections, message somebody and say, I need an image that'll identify with this. Search and find it. There's so many free images that you can use, but know that it's not just relevant for one thing. And I didn't share that before because I didn't think about it, but so many things will connect with someone in another way that it won't connect with somebody else, but it'll connect with somebody else for another reason. And so it's not about the likes or the shares or that kind of stuff. Just do something. And if you feel good about it, like you were doing, it will build. It will build. When the spirit is there, it will build. And so finding imagery, I'm a great resource for that. Any of you that are watching that need that, reach out to me, because I already am working with some, probably about 12 missionaries right now that are doing stuff online. And they're like, can I share this? Do you know where to find this? I want a picture like this. And I can get those resources for you. I can help you with that, but they also are there online and they're there. I think the funniest thing is, like I said, we overcomplicate it. And when we pause and we think about it, I think these kind of things that we're doing like today are super helpful, because they really help us to know that we're not alone. There's lots of us that are willing to help, because we all have the same mission. And that mission is to help others to find Christ.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And thank you so much for your time today and the message you gave. And the one takeaway I take it is there's not a right way to define the image you're looking at using. Right. And you may use it for one place but the other. But if you pray, you also learn what your audience likes and what doesn't like, and you know what outlet you're writing for. And those are all important things to do that you're going to do successful. And there are people that are there to help, and reach out to them, and they'll help you succeed. So thank you. And
be positive. I mean, things are going to change. Yeah, be positive, because you may not get huge, engagement in the beginning. That's okay, because you're just doing what we've been asked to do. But it will come. So be patient. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Appreciate it, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.